Hello, or welcome back. Either way, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for coming. Today we're going to be doing Va'etchanan, the second reading, which is Deuteronomy 3:5 through 4:40. But before we dig into that and recap, yesterday in the first reading of Va'etchanan, God had already told Moses numerous times that he would not cross the Jordan. That is, Moses was not going to be crossing the Jordan. Nevertheless, Moses pleaded with God to allow him to cross the Jordan and enter the promised land. This angered God, and he told Moses, never ask again. God was concerned that the people would think that God was either too hard or that Moses was a pest. So he forbid Moses to ask about that again. So Moses was going to die on the east side of Jordan and was not going to be crossing over. We also looked at the Moabite women in Beit Pe'or. That was something, that was something else. If you missed that, definitely go back and check it. Check it out from yesterday's video. I'll try to link that at the end of this video. Um, and they also looked at in Beit Peor how they seduced the children of Israel to commit horrid sin with them at them and Baal Peor. Remember, they would take the idol, and I'm not going to dig into it. If you want to go back and catch it, I'm going to get sidetracked if I start that. But God ended up killing 157,200 Israelites for the sin with Baal Peor, which the Moabite women caused him to do. And at the close of the first reading, Moses was stressing the importance of the Torah commandments and their perfection. And it's there where we pick up with Va'etchanan, the second reading, Deuteronomy 3:5, and going through 4:40. Just a second, please. Starting in Deuteronomy 3:5, or Devarim 3:5. Behold, as God my God commanded me to, I have taught you the rules and ordinances for you to abide by when you will live in the land that you are entering in order to possess. You must safeguard these rules and ordinances. Make sure you're performing them properly by constantly studying the Torah's instructions how to perform them, and then you must perform them. For that is what will attest to your wisdom and your understanding in the eyes of eyes of other peoples, who will hear all these rules and say, only this great nation is such a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has a God as near to it as God our God is to us whenever we call upon him? And what great nation is there that has rules and ordinances as just and relevant as this entire Torah, which I am setting before you today? Therefore, be wary and guard yourself carefully, lest you forget what you have learned and start observing God's rules and ordinances incorrectly. For if you do, you will appear foolish rather than wise. In addition, take care lest you forget the foundation underlying your observance of these rules and ordinances, namely, the things that you saw with your own eyes at Mount Sinai when God gave you the Torah. And lest these things depart from your heart all the days of your life, and you must impart them as well to your children and to your children's children. The divine revelation that you experienced on the day you stood before God, your God, at Mount Horeb, when God said to me, assemble the people for me, I will let them hear my words in order that they will learn to revere me all the days that they live on the earth, and in order that they teach their children to revere me as well. You approached and stood at the foot of the mountain. The mountain burned with fire that rose up to the midst of heaven, and it was enveloped by 3 degrees of obscurity, darkness, a normal cloud, and a thick cloud. I wanted to make note of that because it hit me as odd, and there's several sources that relate to this, and several places, at least 3 that I know of, where it talks about these 3 levels on the mountain: the darkness, the normal cloud, and the thick cloud that were there. And several sources draw a parallel between these 3 layers at Sinai with 3 sacred zones, like the temple or the tabernacle courts. So it seems like the structure was the same with the outer court, the holy place, and the Holy of Holies. So we see see these different layers of security around the holy. The Midrash and later Kabbalistic writings see the three terms darkness, cloud, and thick darkness as successive veils around the divine presence. So while it's not mapped out one-to-one to the temple compartments, the conceptual link is definitely there. So as God is giving the Torah from atop Mount Horeb, which is also Mount Sinai, it's the same place. We see this structure with the people in the outer court, the mountain between the darkness and the natural cloud. Would That would be the holy place, and then when you get beyond the dark cloud, that's like the Holy of Holies, and that's where Hashem is speaking from. But they can't see him. They can't see a thing other than those dark clouds. Again, the darkness, the natural cloud, and the thick darkness, or the unnatural thick dark cloud. We're going to pick up back here in verse 12. God spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of the words, but saw no image. You only heard God's voice. He told you the terms of his covenant, the Torah, that he commanded you to observe, and summarized it in the Ten Commandments. And he inscribed the Ten Commandments on 2 stone tablets. God commanded me at that time, during my first 40 days on Mount Sinai after the giving of the Torah, to teach you the oral explanation of the rules and ordinances, so that you should perform them properly in the land into which you are crossing in order to possess. Another thing there we see where Moses was given the task of passing on the oral Torah, because there's so many things in the Torah that you cannot keep if you don't have the oral component with it, which God gave to Moshe on top of Mount Sinai, because the Torah is more like bullet points. There's certain things in here, as we'll see, not next week, but the week after. I can't remember which chapter it is, but it's coming up in 2 weeks, when we'll see God telling the people that when you get into the land, you're going to want to eat meat. And you can eat from your flocks. You can take it from your own flocks and your herds, but you have to kill the animal in the manner in which I have commanded you. And you can look all day, all month, all year, all eternity, and you're not going to find the instructions about how to perform a kosher slaughter on an animal, because that was the oral component. And that's just an example that you couldn't even follow that instruction in Deuteronomy. I want to say 12, but it's in a couple of weeks. We'll see it. But it would be unable to keep that commandment without the oral component, which is why Moses spent 40 days on Mount Sinai learning that oral component. And who knows how much longer he might have spent. We're going to pick up again in verse 15. You must guard yourselves carefully against the temptation to depict what you experienced at Mount Sinai in any visual form, for you did not see any image of God on the day that God spoke to you at Mount Horeb out of the midst of the fire. Verse 16, be careful lest you become corrupt and make a sculpted image for yourselves to worship, the representation of any form, whether it be the likeness of a male or a female human being, the likeness of any beast that is on this earth, the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the sky, the likeness of anything that crawls on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water lower than the earth surrounding it. Be careful, too, lest you lift up your eyes toward heaven in search of something to worship, and see the sun, the moon, the stars, or all the host of heaven, which God your God appointed to give light to all the people who dwell under the entire heaven, all the peoples of the earth, and be lured to prostrate yourself before them and worship them. In addition to serving as luminaries, God specifically created the celestial bodies to test humanity to see if they would succumb to the temptation and worship them. But whereas he allowed the other nations to err in this matter and to escape the consequences for the time being, he will not be so generous with you. For as you see, God took you and brought you from the iron crucible, that is, out of Egypt, where he refined the dross out of you and forged you into a people whom he can call his heritage, as you are this day. As I have said, the reason I am not entering the promised land is because God became angry with me at Kadesh because of you. And he swore that I would neither cross the Jordan River nor enter the good land that God your God is giving you as an inheritance. For I must die and be buried in this land. I will not even cross the Jordan River in a coffin. You, however, have been forgiven and will cross it, and you will take possession of this good land. Backsliding into idolatry will not only keep you from entering and conquering the promised land, it will also prevent you from remaining in it. Beware, lest you forget the covenant of God your God that he made with you, and you make for yourselves sculpted image that is the likeness of anything which God your God has forbidden you to do. Verse 24, for God your God is metaphorically a consuming fire. He is a zealous God who does not tolerate infidelity. I want to make a note here. This one says metaphorically. Later in the verses, they use another word. Whenever they're relating God, this one relates God to a consuming fire. Another word, I think it says figuratively. You'll see it when we get there, and it talks about God's arm, his outstretched arm, and by his strong hand. I'll point it out again when we get there, but they use these words because God does not have an image. He doesn't have anything tangible to him. He doesn't have hands. He doesn't have an arm. He's not a consuming fire literally. Metaphorically, he's a consuming fire. Metaphorically, or we'll see the words that they use when we get there, but he figuratively has an arm. He figuratively has a hand. I just wanted to point that out because if you don't understand that, you could misunderstand the text. Now, we don't want that to happen. Verse 25, when you have children and grandchildren and are long established in the land, and you become corrupt and make a sculpted image, the likeness of anything, and do evil in the eyes of God your God, provoking him to anger by worshiping it, I invoke heaven and earth today as witnesses and reminders, since they will be present then, whereas I will not, that I am warning you that you will speedily and utterly perish from the land into which you are crossing the Jordan River to possess. You will not endure it, but you will be utterly destroyed. God will scatter you among the peoples, and you will remain few in number among the nations to where God will lead you. As slaves, you will serve idol-worshiping masters in your exile. So it will be as though you yourselves will be worshiping other deities there, man's handiwork, wood and stone, that cannot see, hear, eat, or smell. But since God has irrevocably made you his people, you will eventually seek God your God from there, and you will find him if you seek him with all of your heart and all your soul. When you are distressed and all these things happen to you in the end of the days of your exile, you will return to God your God and obey him. Verse 31, for God your God is a merciful God. He will not loosen his hold on you, allowing you to assimilate altogether, nor destroy you outright. Neither will he forgive the covenant of your forefathers, which he swore to them. As for his threat to utterly destroy you, he made this threat contingent on your being long established in the land. He will therefore exile you before this condition will be fulfilled. You need only inquire regarding the early days that precede you, since the day that God created humanity on the earth, and ask everyone on earth from one end of heaven to the other, whether there was ever anything like this great phenomenon, or was the likes of it ever heard. Did a people ever hear God's voice speaking out of the midst of a fire, as you have heard and remained alive? Or has any God miraculously come and taken for himself a whole nation from the midst of another nation, daring the host nation to test him with trials? Or providing his emissary with signs confirming the supernal power that sent him? Or smiting the host nation with marvels and plagues? Or waging war against it? or beside the other plagues which only vexed the Egyptians but did not kill them, figuratively using his mighty hand to kill their animals with an epidemic, or figuratively using his outstretched arm to kill their firstborn, or manifesting the great awesome presence as all that God your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes. And that's where I was saying they use the word figuratively. They don't mean that God didn't kill their animals with an epidemic. It means that he didn't really use his hand. And it doesn't mean that he didn't really kill their firstborn. It means he didn't use an outstretched arm. Those are figurative terms because God does not have a body. Verse 35, nonetheless, the miracles of Exodus did not preclude the existence of some other, albeit lesser, deity. But when God gave you the Torah, you were shown that there is no other deity. He first opened up the entire hierarchy of the spiritual worlds in order for you to know that God is the only God in it. And he tore open both spiritual and physical reality so that you could see that there is no other reality within creation besides him. From heaven, he made you hear his voice to instruct you. Upon the earth, he showed you his great fire, and you heard his words issuing out of the midst of the fire. He did all this because he loved your forefathers, and for the same reason, he chose their seed after them to be his people. He therefore took you out of Egypt, protecting you either by placing himself in front of you or placing you in front of him, whichever was necessary, and showing your forefathers how he rescued you at the Sea of Reeds with his great strength, in order to drive out from before you nations who are greater and stronger than you, to bring you to their land and give you their land so that you can pass it down as an inheritance, as you have already seen prior to today with regard to Sihon and Og. You must therefore, in response to this revelation, make every effort to know today and consider in your heart that God is the only God, both in heaven above and on earth below, and furthermore, that all reality owes its existence to God. There is no intrinsic existence other than his. In order to enable you to achieve this awareness, God has given you the Torah and its commandments. You must therefore observe his rules and his commandments that I am commanding you today, so that it may go well with you and your children after you, and so that you may endure in the land that God your God is giving you forever. That brings us to a close at the second reading. Tomorrow's going to be very special. I don't want to spoil the surprise, but it's going to be very special. And you don't want to miss it. So thank you for your time today. It's been a little bit lengthy, but it was a little bit lengthy of a reading. Tomorrow we'll get into the third reading. I hope you're enjoying this. Most of all, before I let you go, you know the thing. You know the thing. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And like I say, I hope you really liked it. I hope you got something out of it. And if you did, please share it. Share it with somebody that you think might find this interesting. And if you liked it enough to share, please subscribe so you don't miss another video. If you missed any of Devarim, I'll put the playlist somewhere on the screen here, along with the link that you can subscribe. And I mentioned the other video at the beginning. I'll link that as well. So it'll be kind of a mess here at the end on the screen. But thank you for your time. I hope you got something out of it again. Have a good evening. God bless.